While I was in London, I took a day trip to Dover, and I highly recommend if you're going to London, take a day to see Dover. It's worth it. Other than maybe the British Museum, it was the single best thing I saw on the trip. So Dover is on the British coast. It's only about an hour and 15 minutes or so to get there from London by rail. That's one of the great things about traveling in the UK is the rail system's very efficient and reliable, and the country's not very big. So it's only about an hour and a half, or I guess a bit less, hour and 15 minutes from London to Dover. And most places in the UK are only about an hour or two away by rail. And the trains, in my experience, pretty much always came on time and pretty much always arrived on time. It was great. I had like I said, I had spent like $700 for an unlimited rail pass. So that meant if I just wanted to go to Dover or something, I just walk up to the gate, flash my pass, they let me on the train. I don't have to buy tickets ahead of time or anything. And that was kind of worth a couple $100, not having to really plan and buy tickets. I could just show up right before the train arrived. But yeah, so Dover's on the English coast. It's actually the closest place in the British Isles to the mainland. So on clear days, apparently you can see France. I don't know if I saw France. I might have seen France. I might not have seen France. It's like when I was at Gibraltar, I couldn't tell because it gets dark on the horizon, etc. So, of course, the biggest thing about Dover is the cliffs. And it's probably the most iconic, at least geographically iconic, symbol of Great Britain. And from my understanding, what people have told me is the term Albion, which is kind of the archaic mythical name for Great Britain, might have been inspired by the White Cliffs. So the White Cliffs are giant cliffs made out of chalk, pure white chalk. It doesn't look like there's veins of anything in it. It's just this incredible pure white color you don't normally see in nature, especially to that amount. And it really is chalk because once you get up on it, you can walk up right to the cliffs and the ground's just covered with it. And if you like pick it up, you can like crush it in your hands. It gets all over you. It's amazing. So you arrive in Dover at the train station, and to get up the cliffs, you have to hike. It takes quite a bit of time to get up them. There's an elevator or something. I didn't see one. I just climbed up. There's like a switchback path that you get to go up, and there's I think it's a national park. I'm not sure how they work in the UK, but you can walk along the cliffs, you can walk along the top. There's a bunch of different routes, so it's amazing. You just walk along the cliffs of Dover, and fortunately they kind of zigzag. So because kind of my worry was because you're on top of them, you might not be able to see them properly. But that's not really that they're best seen from the sea. But that's not exactly the case because it's hard when I can't show my hands. But they do kind of curve in, etc. So rest assured, you can very clearly see the cliffs from on top of them. And it is spectacular. It's just incredible. I've never seen anything like it. And I've been to the Rockies, etc. But it's just so weird to see this pure white color. And it's fascinating just because the ground is covered in chalk, etc. And it's basically just the chalk that you'd have in school, but less refined. So you can literally like crush it in your hands or whatever. It's really neat. So the White Cliffs are incredible. I wish I had more time and I could just spend all day walking up and down them. Great symbol of Britain. So then we have Dover Castle, and I did a vlog at Dover Castle actually about the usage of castles. So Dover Castle is one of the largest castles in Great Britain and probably in the world. So it was built for the obvious reason that Dover is directly across the channel from France. It's the closest place. So if someone from the continent were to invade, that would be the logical target. You land there, you establish a beachhead, and you bring your forces over. However, one can only imagine the depths of madness that would lead someone to attack Dover Castle. Firstly, it's up on the side of a mountain. Well, I don't know if it's technically a mountain, but it's up on the side of a massive cliff. And most of it is up against the cliff, or I guess over the cliff kind of, so you can't really go up that way. The only way to get up is you have to go up like this switchback path up this really steep hill, and there's multiple layers of walls, and there's archer towers like all over the place. It would be a nightmare to get up there. And Dover Castle was upgraded over time, so it did have cannons, and actually it was reactivated during World War II. But it's a huge complex, and there's just so much stuff there to see. You could spend all day just walking through the passages, etc. It was really neat, and it's huge, and it's so scenic because you're up on this hill. So I really love Dover Castle. There's a cool little museum there about the history of it. It's a very big thing for the Normans and for some of the other dynasties. It's one of those. It's one of many castles that was occasionally a royal residence. And the other kind of interesting thing is that this is directly was used very recently during the Second World War. If you've seen the movie Dunkirk, which if you haven't, what are you doing? Go see Dunkirk. Dunkirk's a 10 out of 10 movie. But the evacuation of Dunkirk was planned and coordinated from Dover Castle. There's anti-aircraft guns there from the Second World War. And so you can go into the secret wartime tunnels. So you get to go way down. They have a really elaborate display. They have movies. They have like special effects and stuff. And you get to read and learn all about the evacuation from Dover. And they really do a good job of dramatizing it. And to me, this was way better than the lame Churchill war rooms. Maybe it's because I'd recently seen the movie like last year or whatever, but great time. Absolutely loved Dover. So on the way back, I went to Canterbury. Unfortunately, I missed the cathedral being open. So the cathedral was closed when I got there. However, I can't pronounce it. Kaplan, whatever the Anglican evening prayer was still there. Was still scheduled to happen by the time I arrived in Canterbury, so I could go in for the evening prayer. A tip if you're in Europe, most cathedrals and churches will charge an admission fee, and I know some people will be like, "Oh, it's the church's worldly wealth." Oh, but to be fair, these things are expensive. You have these huge stone buildings. You have to heat it. You have to light it. You have to pay people. Yeah, the priests have to eat. They're expensive to run. And if you're just there as a tourist, I don't think it's unreasonable for them to charge you some money to go inside so it can be preserved for future generations. But my point is, what's interesting is you don't get charged if you go for a religious service, because they aren't going to prevent people from going to church because they can't pay. So if a cathedral or whatever is like 20 euros or 20 pounds to go into, just go there for a service. Go there for mass. If you're not Anglican, go there for, I guess it's called divine service. And you get to go in for free. Now, I would still recommend donating something, even if it's like 5 euros or 5 pounds or something, because like I said, they have to pay for the upkeep, but it's an easy way to get past admission, which is nice, because, yeah, who doesn't like saving money? Canterbury, it's interesting. The city council of Canterbury seems like they're on a power trip, because they have a lot of signs everywhere, like ranting about like vagrancy and like aggressive begging and stuff. I was a big fan. The city walls of Canterbury are still intact, so I got to walk along them, and I got to go to an Anglican service, which was actually quite nice. It was fairly pleasant, so I enjoyed that. So, but I can't really give a proper review to Canterbury because I was only there for a couple hours, and I didn't really get to see anything open. When I went to the nighttime service, it was in the choiry, and the lights weren't on throughout the cathedral, so I couldn't really see it. But still cool. I can say I went to a service in Canterbury Cathedral. So we'll finish this off with Windsor. Now, Windsor is I don't know what you want to call it, a cottage town, a suburb, whatever. But it's notable for Windsor Castle and Eton College. So Windsor Castle is the Queen's main residence. It's an interesting thing. Most monarchs have a couple residences. This is her favorite one. She calls it the cottage, and she calls Buckingham Palace the office, and she really doesn't like Buckingham Palace. So Windsor is basically a castle town. Windsor Castle is huge. It's gigantic. It's massive. It's really impressive. It's one of the, it was actually a castle that was built to be defensive, and once again, you can only imagine the depths of madness that would drive someone to attack something like that. But apparently, some of the more impressive features were added during the Victorian era. A lot of stuff got renovated during the Victorian era to provide more, to make it look more majestic and epic, because the Victorians were very big on that kind of thing. They were a very sentimental people. But no, Windsor Castle's cool. What the coolest thing about Windsor Castle is the kind of stuff you see inside of Windsor Castle. There is portraits of most of the monarchs. If you look at Wikipedia and you see the picture of a monarch, like a painting of a monarch, like what they have, pretty much all of those are at Windsor Castle. There's also a collection of pictures from the Napoleonic Wars. So like on Wikipedia, the picture of Mitternacht is there. A bunch of Wellington, obviously, Nelson, all kinds of people. There's a big room full of weapons that have belonged to the royal family, and there's all these kind of fascinating, bizarre, like guns and swords and stuff. It's really neat. And oh boy, they had the wedding dress of Meghan Markle there. Meghan Merkel, however the hell you pronounce her name. They had that there. I mean, that's just that made the trip for me. But yeah, it was really neat. Windsor Castle was great. What else is cool? Why did I give the Queen Swans a nut? I don't know. I wasn't probably thinking when I did this. The other thing is, outside of Windsor Castle, there's a river, and on the river there is dozens and dozens of swans. There is like hundreds of them. So apparently they're all personally owned by the Queen. They all have tags on. I think they get fed, but I've never seen so many swans in my life. And swans are amazing animals. I love swans. They're fascinating just how big they are. They're gigantic. Like until you see a swan in person, you don't realize how big a bird they are. They're bigger than dogs. So they're just all over the place. And when I was there, I was fortunate enough to see a guy throw a loaf of bread in the water, and the swans have like a feeding frenzy. And it was insane, but that's really cool because I like swans and I like rivers and I like castles. So the next one may be a bit of a stretch, but Eden College is there, and I figured I'm gonna go see Eden just because I'm there and it's something very famous. The issue with Eden College is I think they only have tours on Sundays, like once a month. It's very, very uncommon. They don't really let you go in. Maybe there's a little museum. I couldn't find one. So I just kind of walked alongside the outside and tried to see anything. But like most kind of old stuff, there's just trees blocking everything. So I can say I've been to Eden College, but I couldn't really see anything. So if you're in Windsor, it was just down the street, so you might as well go there. But don't make a trip there to see Eden College. Anyways, so that is it for this portion, and more to come.